Hey guys, this is a little bit different scenery today, as I really want to do something I always wanted to do, and this stuff I really enjoy and love. The Appalachian mountain stories. These horror stories are literally like my favorite thing, and like hearing people read about them is another one of my favorite things. I literally go down a rabbit hole with this kind of stuff. It's amazing, awesome, and puts crew to sleep. So I found this story on Reddit that I really want to read to you guys because I found it interesting and I hope you guys do too. Um, so yeah, this is my first ever like reading video, so I don't know if I'm gonna do more of these or this might be my literal only one I'm ever doing. So the story isn't very long, which is good because if you know me, I'm not the greatest reader ever, so you probably don't really want me reading for a long time. So I do apologize in advance. I'm gonna read kind of quieter just because crew's sleeping. But here we go. This story may be short or it may be drawn out. I'm recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I've experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2 to 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia, and I have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and at nighttime, there's a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. Okay, before we get started into this, I if I lived in a wooded area, I would literally have my windows closed every night. Like, not okay, my windows closed. My curtains closed every single night. I would not be able to look outside. Like, that's I could not. Anyways, I was with a friend. I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke a joint. This was not a particularly long trail, but it was very dense in the woods that surrounded it. And it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally got we finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stopped, packed our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for this time of night was unsettling. At this point, it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk, when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there's a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking voice, shaking and uncertain, almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We both we bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quitting or stopping. At this point, I'm convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail, grasping for breath and about almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was. We begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there's a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know, I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. This was screams sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was the most genuinely depraved and violent scream that I have ever heard. This is a true story that I have only told maybe 3 people, all who have seemed to brush it off as it was false. I've never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. So, what the F? First of all, freaking terrifying. No. I feel like if I lived in that area, I would totally like want to like go like explore these woods or whatever, but not at nighttime. Like I want to experience the things that these people are experiencing, but like at the same time I don't. Like part of me like I feel like I do believe this kind of stuff, but at the same time, I'm like, I kind of want to experience it to believe it type of thing. I don't know. It's kind of creepy, kind of scary. Um, yeah, if I was literally in that situation, I'd probably like crouch and start crying, and I would not be able to move. I feel like once I get into like situations like that, like I can't do anything with myself. Like I'd stop and drop and cry, and I have I literally can't when it comes to that kind of stuff, which has never happened to me before, but I feel like that's what would happen to me, or that's what I would do. Yeah, I kind of want to like go on a trip there someday and like explore, but like some people don't come out ever. So like I don't know if I want to. Like I've heard stories of people getting lost in there, or like they thought they were walking on the same trail but they ended up like on a different one and like couldn't find their way out. So I don't know if I want to. Obviously, I wouldn't go by myself. I would go with other people who are willing to come with me. So if you're willing to go to the Appalachian Mountains with me, let me know, and then maybe we can go for a trip or something. And hopefully we make it back home alive. Hopefully. Or maybe we can just get a cabin in the woods and like just see what happens from there. But anyways, let me know what you guys thought of this video and if I should do more of these, because I enjoy watching them, but I don't know if I'm good at them. But yeah, just let me know. Thanks for watching.
I will follow you for the rest of your life. Welcome back to the series where I tell true horror experiences submitted by you, the viewers. Today's viewer has requested to remain anonymous, but I'm going to be completely transparent with you. This isn't any attempt at engagement, I'm just being real here. I genuinely believe that today's story is by far the most terrifying one I've told on the channel as of yet, so discretion is advised. And now that you've been warned, let's get into it. This true horror experience takes place in Europe, Wales. This story is told through the perspective of my father, who grew up in a village in the south of Wales. The house that my father and his family grew up in was the subject of many terrifying tales. The kind of reputation that when a fellow villager would walk past late at night, their voices would instinctively shallow to a whisper. According to these shallow voices across town, the house was once a hive for satanic rituals and witchcraft. Each room a different tale. The basement, the attic, the living room and even the kitchen were all hubs for these terrifying activities. Despite being advised by the villagers to move house, my dad and his family ignored the warnings, simply believing that they were trying to scare them away. At first, they may have been right. But then my uncle, the youngest brother, started to have nightmares. The nightmares always took place in the house. The living room, to be precise, where he would be chilling on the sofa, reading a magazine, when suddenly the house would go dark. And then she would appear. My uncle described her as an older woman, with long hair and who was unnaturally tall for her age. She wouldn't move, wouldn't blink, wouldn't do anything but say that this is her house, and that a stupid, disgusting, happy family didn't belong there. The nightmares, they didn't stop there. They reoccurred for weeks and weeks. He ended up having to sleep in his mother's bed so that she could wake him up in order for him to escape them. Despite how much they were affecting him, my aunt or his sister always thought he was making them up, assuming that he was trying to get more attention from his mum, considering he was a bit of a mummy's boy. They ended up having a huge argument where my aunt flat out accused my uncle of making them up. However, that very night, my aunt had an identical dream. The same room, same spot on the sofa, and the same woman. After hearing about this, their mother decided to contact a priest to conduct a spiritual cleanse on the property. But this just made everything worse. During a cleanse, you're meant to leave at least one window or door open, but the priest insisted on locking everything. The next day, my nan found out that that same priest had left town. I still wonder what he was running from. My father, the protective older brother, became increasingly frustrated as these dreams continued to haunt his siblings. One day, home alone, it all got to him. He yelled out, "Leave my siblings alone and come and haunt my dreams." It did. But way worse. Instead of being in the living room, he found himself in a void. And in front of him was the same old woman that his siblings had described. But instead of muttering, she was screaming. "I will follow you for the rest of your life. I will wait for you to find a wife and have children, and I will haunt them too. I will make their lives a living hell. And then, when your third child is born, you will die." He never spoke a word of this to his siblings. He was just so relieved that she had stopped tormenting them, and after a year or so, the dream stopped. Until the night that his first child was born. The void, the woman, the screaming. It was a reminder. My father was terrified, not just for himself, but for the family that he had built. However, after I was born, the second son, nothing bad had happened to anyone, besides my father, of course, who was still having the dreams. But he himself wasn't fully convinced that the spirit had returned, and that perhaps it was just the worry inside his head that maybe one day she would. My little sister, the third child, was born, and that day, my father passed away. The doctors said he had talk and die syndrome, which refers to patients who are conscious and talking immediately after a serious traumatic brain injury, and then hours later they deteriorate rapidly as the brain swelling increases. My father had been home alone when he had fallen down the stairs, describing the feeling of being pushed by seemingly no one. One of the last things my father told me was the story that I'm telling you now. Last night, after a long day of revision, I started to get ready for bed when I saw it, standing in the corner of my room, was an old lady with long hair and muttering the final words that my father had told me. "Be strong for your mother and siblings. I love you."
So for today's story time, I'm going to share another story from my life as a medium, and this is going to be one that is probably going to freak people out, more so than probably anything else I've shared so far. Like, I'm pretty desensitized to a lot of the creepy stuff. Like, being a medium, you just get used to this kind of stuff, but even this experience, like, I just think about sometimes, and I'm just like, I'm going to share it because people love hearing this stuff. They find it very interesting. So I guess this will be episode 2 of the Me DM Diaries, I guess. So today's story takes us to a very small mountain town in North Georgia called Ellijay, and it really is a beautiful area. Like, the mountains are beautiful. They have waterfalls. They have a river. Like, it's a gorgeous place. And I've been there many times. Like, it's a gorgeous area. And like, usually I go with my family, but there was one time that it was just me and my friends. And technically you can say family because me and my sister have the same friends. And I don't know what that says about us. I think it says more about me because I'm the younger sister. So you can kind of guess who was whose friends first. So we rented a cabin one weekend. That was really hard for me to say, y'all. I couldn't say my R's when I was a kid. Wow, that was difficult. I guess this has turned into an unofficial sponsorship for speech therapy. So yay for speech therapy. But like, it was me and my friends. We rented a cabin, and I think it was like 6 or 7 of us. And we all drove separately. So we were all arriving at different times. And when I got there and I walked into the cabin for the first time, I got hit by 2 things. One, the sheer amount of live, laugh, love decor on the walls. So this place looked like if the purge was real, those owners, they like burgled the heck out of a Hobby Lobby somewhere. The second thing that hit me was there was definitely a presence in the house. I felt her from the minute I walked in. Like, I'm used to kind of running into spirits sometimes. Like, I live in a haunted city. It's going to happen. And, like, spirits are more places than you would think. So I really didn't acknowledge her, like, when I got there. And you can say I have no manners, because in this case, yeah, sure. But I basically go the whole evening, you know, with my friends without mentioning to them, you know, just this energy that's in the house, because I don't see the point in freaking out other people. Like, even if it doesn't freak me out, like, that doesn't mean the same for them. So I just kept my mouth shut, which, you know, was not easy for me to do. So we're having a good time that night, and my friends are like karaoke, and they're singing Bohemian Rhapsody, like all on different keys. It sounds awful. And that's when I catch something at the corner of my eye. So I look over at the stairs where I was seeing it, and at the bottom of the stairs is a woman, a female, a ghost, a spirit, whatever you want to call her. What I'm going to call her is PO'd, because that's what she was. She wasn't mad at me or anyone in the house. Like, she was upset with how she met her demise, and I think she had every right to be, because as soon as I like met her, I was picking up that like a man did her dirty, and ultimately she was disposed of, you know, in the water somewhere. I figured the river probably that goes through the mountains, but like, she was really PO'd, and she was a young girl too. I mean, she was like early 20s, maybe at the oldest. So I felt for her, and I just kind of looked at her, and I did like the, you know, the acknowledgement head nod you give somebody sometimes when you're walking past them in the grocery aisle trying to get to the ketchup or something. And the important thing to know about spirits is, like, a majority of the time I'm not seeing like things like that. Like, usually I'm giving readings for people, I'm connecting with their loved ones, or like, even if I'm going out and about in Savannah or whatever, like, I might run into a few ghosts here and there, but it's very rare that I run into something that is so stereotypical horror movie. But this was one of those occasions. So I'm looking at this girl, and like, one of the first things I think is copyright infringement, because she looked exactly like the girl from The Ring. I mean, it was eerily close. I was like, let me call Warner Brothers. I don't know who has that, but I was just like, that is eerily similar. And if you see my page, you know that this is not my first time seeing a waterlogged spirit. I don't know what it is about me that attracts these things. It's like I'm Aquaman for the dead. I don't know what's going on. So I'm looking at this girl, and, you know, I gave my head nod of acknowledgement, and, you know, I was kind of asking her, I was kind of like, and, you know, mediumship's highly, you know, mental or whatever. And I was asking her, I was like, you know, how can I help? Like, what do you need? Like, do you want me to just acknowledge you? Like, because I'm not just going to look at your suffering and just like turn a blind eye, even if I'm the only one that can see it. So like, I refuse to fall victim to the bystander effect, even when there's a veil of reality between it. But the girl doesn't answer me. Instead, she does probably what the creepiest thing she could have done. And again, I have a high threshold for being like scared and like freaked out, because I've seen a lot of stuff in my day with this. And I'll even say with this, it didn't really faze me, because I watched it with just like a plain face. But she took it upon herself to kind of like do a back bend and get on all fours and like walk backwards up the stairs like a spider. And I was like, that's dramatic. But also, I understand it, girl, because you went through it, and like, you're mad, and like, you do what you gotta do. You act out, you throw a tantrum, like, I'm with you. Like, I'd be mad too. And again, I still don't tell my friends anything, because I don't want to scare them, because it's like 1 a.m. at this point. We're all about to go to bed, and while they're trying to sleep, I don't want them thinking about, you know, the girl from The Ring walking up like a brown recluse up the stairs. Like, I knew I was fine. I knew I was gonna sleep fine, because I can compartmentalize like the Navy, so I was good. So anyway, like, we all go to sleep, and we wake up the next morning, and like, I'm one of the first ones up, and so I like go downstairs, and I meet another one of my friends, and then eventually my sister comes downstairs. She's like, I had the weirdest dream last night. And like, I just kind of, because I already have a feeling where this is going, because if this girl was already like loud in the sense of me like visually seeing her walking up the stairs like that, I would not be surprised if she was like giving people dreams the night before. So our friend asked my sister, like, what did you see in your dream? But before she could answer, I kind of cut in, and I was like, was she, you know, a younger, you know, white woman, and she had like on this long white gown to her ankles, and she had long black hair, and she was wet? My sister's face, I mean, she looked like her gasps were flabbered. Like, she was just like, that is identical to the girl that I saw in my dream. At that point, I was like, okay, well, I know what she looked like, because I saw this happen on the stairs yesterday, and that immediately freaks my friends out. But I was like, y'all, we really have nothing to fear with her. Like, she's not a danger or anything. She's just upset about what happened to her. I mean, that's really the gist of the story, because like, for the rest of the weekend, I was like reading historical records, trying to find like a news article or something for this girl, but it happened in that like late 1800s or so there was really nothing to find online. But before we left, I kind of like said to her, I was kind of like, girl, you don't have to stay here, you know, you can move on. I know you're upset, but you deserve peace. Like, you should go, you know, have your happiness. I don't know if she ever did move on, but you know, I did my due diligence of being the stereotypical ghost whisperer for a second. So I wish her the best, and I hope she's doing okay, and I hope, you know, that she finds the peace that she needs. But yeah, in the meantime, if she's still hanging around, I mean, at least she's getting a workout on them stairs, girl. Her thighs and hamstrings, they must be peak.
You like spooky stories? Welcome to Spooky Storytelling Time with Shan, your host. Shan, the spooky teller. Let's read into it. I hope everyone had a happy Mother's Day. If you are a mother, shout out to you. Shout out to all the moms. I hope you had a happy Mother's Day. Happy Monday. I hope everyone had a great weekend, a relaxing weekend, and enjoyed and spending time with their mothers. Let's get into this Monday morning story. This story is called White with Red. A man just moved into his apartment and heads to the receptionist to get his keys. The receptionist gave him the key with a smile, but warns him not to disturb the door with no number on his floor. He wondered why, but didn't bother to ask. He was too busy with his new apartment to care. After he finished unpacking, he began to get curious. He questioned why the receptionist would warn him of such things. And so he stepped out of his apartment to check the door with no number. He tried the doorknob first, but it was locked. So instead, he got onto his knees and peeked through the keyhole. Oh no, I wouldn't do that. His eyes scanned the whole place before stopping at a woman standing face against a wall in the corner. He noticed her pale skin and long black hair before stepping back, suddenly feeling perverted in a way for invading someone else's privacy. He brushed it off, assuming she was someone that did not want to be disturbed. The next day, he got more curious about the woman and eventually went back. Straight away, getting onto his knees, he peeked through the keyhole and saw all red. Red. He assumed the pale woman must have caught him peeking the last time, covered the hole with something red. He left the door alone instead and went to the receptionist to ask her questions. The receptionist, she sighed and asked, "You looked through the keyhole, didn't you?" He admitted to it, and she felt obligated to tell him the story. She told him that a couple used to live in that apartment long time ago, but the husband went crazy and killed his wife. However, the couple wasn't normal. They had pale skin, black hair, and red eyes. Oh no, you will never catch me looking through that peephole. Thank you for coming to Spooky Storytelling Time with Shan. Please share, like, repost, give your girl a follow, comment. You already know the vibes, engage. Go ahead and hit that bell button for me so that you're notified on the next Spooky Story Time with Shan. I thank y'all so much to my followers and my supporters. You guys are amazing. You are the best. And stay spooky, my little spookies.
What would you do if you were in the woods and there was a cemetery? Would you go in it? Would you stay in the cemetery? Would you like stay there until you find out you're not alone there? Listen to this. Hey guys, happy Friday. It is Spooky Scary Storytime Friday, where we like to put a chill up our spine. As you can see, it's a little bit of a different setup for today, but that's okay. We'll go with the flow. But today's story is, I can't hide in the comments, but you guys can. But to make us both feel better, Lord Jesus, I ask that you please protect us, surround us with your angels to shield us from any negative energy that may come across us while listening to this story. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Now let's get into the story. Okay, this story is by, I don't know if this is like the right one, but The Hole in My Spanx. Okay, this story is called Unexplained Experiences of Appalachian Park Rangers, Part 1, Eyes in the Trees. If I mention any names in these stories, they have been changed from the original person's name to protect them, their jobs, and myself, my job. I work as a park ranger in a state-run park in Appalachia. It's a little over 5,000 acres, with a large lake on the property, which draws in many boaters and fishermen. There are many hiking, walking, horseback trails, along with several campground areas, both primitive and not, 2 old cemeteries, and a dilapidated church that held its last service in 1943. Alex and I are a small team of 5 along with our head warden. I am one of the full-time rangers, so I'm here all the time and can confidently say I know the trails and sections like the back of my hand. I've been doing this for just over 7 years, which doesn't seem too long, but for the size of the park, I'm confident in my ability to do my job. However, Things get strange, horrifying, and tragic quite often around here. Around when I first started my career with the park, I had my first encounter with something strange. We don't have gates to keep people out, nor do we charge admission, so we stay open pretty late, usually till 10 p.m., since there are often people camping anyways. Try to keep the average park goers away after late. If the weather is nice, I will usually take my horse to patrol instead of my PV, personal vehicle. I can sneak up on people better that way. You'd be surprised how many people get freaked out over someone walking up to them on horseback after dark. This gives me a chuckle when it's some tough kid trying to impress a girl. He turns and sees a huge, dark figure and yells, "Oh crap," or something of the sort. Nearly soils his pants, that kind of thing. Anyway, this particular night was amazing, so I saddled up on Brave, my noble steed, and did my rounds. The problem areas with after-hours trespassers are usually the cemeteries and the old church, which is on the grounds of the larger cemetery. The other cemetery is a bit smaller and much older, and sits way out in the forest. People gravitate to the one with the church because, while it's close to the road, it's large enough to hide in if you hear a PV coming. Plus, it's real hilly and surrounded by thick woods. The cemetery is just short ways from our station, so the ride was only a few minutes. I came over a hill in the road and saw a car plastered with band stickers parked in the small lot in front of the church. I knew then that there was probably a group of teens in the cemetery trying to scare the crap out of each other. Leaving Brave hitched on the fence by the car, I scanned the cemetery and didn't readily see anyone. However, it's pitch black and there are no lights here. No electricity running anywhere near the place. I radioed to my boss at the station that I had people in the church cemetery and would let him know when they were on their way. He confirmed. I silently made my way through the tombstones, hoping to spot the group before I actually had to start yelling out over the graves in my best authoritative voice. Plus, part of me is a bit of a bully, and I love to scare the crap out of people in the middle of the night by sneaking up and confronting them when they least expect it. It didn't take me long before I spotted some faint lights over by the edge of the cemetery near the unknown Civil War soldiers' graves. It was a group of 5 girls. I started walking toward them, and they must have heard me because they all turned in my direction, and 2 screamed. I suppressed a laugh, turned on my flashlight, and lit them all up. "Alright girls, fun's over. You know you can't be in here this late." They seemed relieved to find I was just a person. When I finally reached them, I noticed that they were all silent. It felt creepy, awkward. But then again, we were all standing in a dark cemetery. "Move, come on," I pressed. They slowly started walking toward the parking lot ahead of me. As we walked, I realized that something seemed off. The night was calm and slightly cool with no wind. It finally dawned on me that there was no sound whatsoever. No late night owls, no crickets, frogs, or other fauna. Nothing. Which is crazy around here. The frogs will normally drive you mad with their calls at night. I think we all jumped when there was a loud pop sound from the forest to the left of us. The girls froze and huddled around me. It is at this time that I will mention I am also a lady, and at the time of the story was not many years older than these girls. So I felt like an awkward mother hen amidst them. Another pop. It sounded to me like large limbs were being snapped off of trees like twigs. I shined my light over, by the tree line, and one of the girls hissed out, "Stop." I instinctively dropped the beam toward my feet. "What?" I asked. One of them shoved a point-and-shoot camera into my hand with an image on the little screen. I was confused as I tried to process what I was seeing. They had taken a shot of the forest with the flash on. The whole image was still nearly black, but I could see the trunks up into the canopies. Then a shiver involuntarily shook through me. There was at least a dozen large sets of big, red, glowing eyes reflecting from the flash. I'm talking basketball-sized eyes, all roughly the same height in the trees. I tried to process this in my head, but another louder wooden pop shattered the air, and the six of us were bolting from the parking lot. Brave was visibly freaking out, ripping and pulling at the reins I tied to the fence. The girls jumped in their car. I could still hear the loud popping noise getting closer. It was definitely wood, like the sound a tree makes when it falls, creating a loud, splintering crack. I tried to think of what it could be. I looked down at the camera I had in my hands. The photo was still on the screen. Maybe they were just unusually large animals, large owls. Maybe one tree had fallen on another and caused some limbs to snap. At this point in my time at the park, I was still pretty good at convincing myself to remain realistic. I turned back towards the woods, held the camera up, and snapped another picture. The large red orbs were now all down by our end of the forest, near the parking lot, still high up as the canopies and staring our direction. I found it odd as I walked over to the car with the girls, and I handed the camera to the driver, who had rolled her window down. I untied Brave and scooted the hell out of there. Brave was all too happy to oblige. I glanced behind me to make sure the girls were leaving. They were on our heels. I had hoped they'd come to the station to file a report with me, but when I noticed them haul ass out the park entrance, I couldn't exactly blame them. When I tried talking to my boss about it, he assured me it was just some dead trees finally succumbing to the gravity, and the eyes were most likely owls. It was pretty easy to convince me, since I was already thinking they had been owls. I still make sure I never go back into that cemetery at night. If there are people in there, I have since made it a point to yell out to get their attention and let them come to me. Yes, it's cowardly, but I can't shake the feeling that those glowing eyes would still be there if you flashed a light over the dark forest. Can you imagine just like you're in the middle of a forest in a cemetery and you see basketball-sized red glowing eyes? I wouldn't. This is why I stay home. This is why you stay home. You don't have to go out there. You don't have to do that, but I can't. I just can't. That's no. Okay, like, I know she was saying that maybe it was owls, but I think that maybe she doesn't think that's true, because, like, let's put aside, let's say they're not owls at all. Basketball-shaped red glowing eyes. Like, she said, like, into the tree line, so, like, what is that tall? Yeah, no, I used to want to go camping. No, I'm not stepping foot into the forest. I'll look through the forest driving by, but other than that, nope. That was the story. It did say part 1, and I have looked. I can't find a part 2, so I'm not sure about that, but that was the story for tonight. Let me know what you guys think of this story down in the comments. Have you had any similar experiences or something? Because I know Appalachia, there's so many stuff that goes on there. Have a scary story, an experience anything paranormal, whatever, if you want to have it read out and shared here, I do this on Fridays, and you can email me at this email here. I'll also leave it in the caption, and it's also on my bio if you look at my profile. I'm just like, for certain, like, forest rangers have so many stories, and like, I can imagine what's out in the woods. But that was the story for today. Let me know if you guys have a story to share, or if you have, you know, something creepy. Let me know down in the comments, and I hope you all have a good night, and I will see you next time for Spooky Scary Storytime Fridays. Have a good night.
We've all probably heard of the Banshee, but do you know the legend behind it? The Banshee is an Irish legend that dates all the way back to 1380. Scottish and Welsh mythology have similar tales. The Banshee will appear in one of three ways. One as a beautiful woman who will lure you in with her beautiful song, a full-figured maid, or even an old witch. But she will always appear with a gray cloak and red eyes from crying. But seeing the Banshee is always a prediction of your death. She will signal her arrival by shrieking or wailing. Soldiers would abandon battles after hearing the Banshee shrieking in the woods. But they would always meet their death after, either by the opposing army who would pick them off as they ran away, or their army who would kill them for deserting them. Even if they tried to hide, the elements would eventually get them. This would just help the rumor of the Banshee spread even faster. So what do you think? Is it all legend, or is the Banshee real? Follow for more scary stories. Have you ever heard of the Springfield Three? On June 7th of 1992, Susie Streeter, her mother Cheryl, and her best friend Stacy McCall all vanished from their home in Springfield, Missouri. The day before, Susie and Stacy had graduated high school. They attended several graduation parties that night and returned home about 2:15 in the morning. They had plans to go to a water park with a group of friends the next day. The next day, Susie and Stacy's friend came to pick them up, but they were nowhere to be found. The front door was unlocked and the porch fixture was broken. The cars were parked outside and their purses were still in the house. Susie's dog was still in the house as well, and it was very obvious that the poor puppy was agitated. It has been 29 years and all three women have never been seen again. And there really isn't any solid evidence that the police can follow up on. There have been a few rumors though. One rumor is that the women were buried under a hospital parking garage. An independent investigator used radar to search the parking garage. They did find 3 anomalies that were all roughly the same size. Many people think it could be the missing 3 women, but police disagree. They don't think it could be them because the construction of the parking lot happened 1 year after their disappearance. Robert Cox also told a journalist while he was imprisoned in Texas that he knew the 3 girls. He also knew that they were murdered and would never be found. Robert lived in Springfield in 1992. His girlfriend also gave him an alibi for the time of the murders, but she would later recant saying she had no idea where he was at the time of the murders. But authorities are still not sure if he is involved. So what are your thoughts? Do you have more to add? Leave it in the comments. Follow for more true crime. Have you ever heard of Rhonda Hinson? On December 22nd of 1981, Rhonda would go to her first company Christmas party in North Carolina. Rhonda left the party around 12 a.m. with 2 other girls. She dropped the girls off and made her way home, which was only about a 10-mile drive. At exactly 1 a.m., Rhonda's mother Judy woke up, startled. She knew something had happened to Rhonda. Rhonda was found dead only half a mile from her home. She had been shot once with a high-powered rifle. The bullet had so much force that it went through her trunk, through the seat, and it penetrated her heart. At first, police thought it was just a random act of violence, but the more they dug, the more they saw that this could have been done by someone Rhonda knew. Rhonda usually loved driving alone, but a while before her murder, she started asking her dad if he could drive her to work. She had also had a strange conversation with her mother in which she asked if it was okay to date a married man. The FBI began to investigate, and they concluded that they thought Rhonda was being stalked the night of her murder. A witness placed a blue Chevrolet vehicle parked on the road where Rhonda would have traveled from 12:15 to 12:30 that morning. There were 2 men sitting in the vehicle. Another witness would come across the scene with the same blue Chevrolet driving away and Rhonda's car parked on the side of the road. There was a woman slumped over the steering wheel and a man by her door. Thinking it was just a drunk couple, he drove off. There was foreign DNA found on Rhonda's sweater, but it's never led to any suspects. There has also been speculation that it could have been Rhonda's ex-boyfriend, but no evidence has ever been found. Over 40 years have gone by and Rhonda's case is still unsolved. So what do you think happened? Not a lot to go on this one. Follow for more true crime. Have you ever heard of Angela Maria Diaz? Angela was married to Ian Diaz. He was a deputy U.S. Marshal. They were expecting twins and life seemed pretty good. That was until Angela started receiving threatening emails from Ian's ex-girlfriend, Michelle Hadley. Angela was also attacked by a man after Michelle placed an ad on Craigslist for Angela looking for a forcible sexual encounter. It was after this that Angela sought a restraining order against Michelle. But Michelle kept contacting her. She was threatening her life and the life of her unborn babies. On June 24th of 2016, the Anaheim Police Department arrested Michelle. After she was arrested, the threatening emails stopped, but she was soon released on bail. The emails started right back up. On July 14th of 2016, police arrested Michelle again. This time she was held on a $1 million bond. She wasn't able to pay it and was held there for 3 months. But there was a major problem in this case. The emails weren't coming from Michelle. They were coming from Angela. Angela had framed Michelle. Michelle was completely innocent of what she was being accused of. Angela had faked her pregnancy and even faked cervical cancer. She faked being an attorney and she faked doctor's notes, making her cervical cancer story more believable. Angela pled guilty to 2 counts of forgery, 1 felony count of perjury and grand theft, and misdemeanor charges of falsely reporting a crime. Michelle has since filed a lawsuit. This basically destroyed her life. It took way too long for Ian to be convicted of anything, but he was finally hit with charges, including conspiracy to commit cyber stalking. This happened in 2016 and he was only charged in 2021. They believe he was protected for so long because he's law enforcement. I wouldn't be surprised. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Follow for more true crime.
So I told you my family came to visit and they're going to tell us some good, creepy stories. So this is actually my mother and she has a great one that gave me chills the first time I heard it.
Whenever I was little, I was probably between 8 and 11 years old. The house we lived in, we were always hearing stuff and everything, but there was this one occurring dream I had. I'd wake up just every few months, wake up during the night, just crying and trying to help somebody. These kids, I was dreaming about these kids getting taken and killed by this man, and it was kind of mixed up and confusing because when I would have the dream, it was people and like kids that I knew, but the man I did not, and they were up on the rooftops of all these different houses that I was familiar with, and I would try to keep reaching for them and could never get them, and then I would wake up crying because he had gotten them. And this went on for about probably 1.5 years, 2 years, and about, like I said, every couple of months I'd have the dream. And then one evening we were watching the news and it was talking about this man and in some city, don't even remember which city it was, but he had been taking these kids in this apartment building and he lived up on a higher floor and he had been killing them and just taking them all over the city. And I never had the dream again, and I don't know what purpose it was, but I never had the dream again.
Now, while I've got her out here, I've got to do one more story with her, and it's one that she used to tell me growing up. I don't know why she would tell me this when I was 3 years old and scare the living shit out of me, but she would always tell me the same ghost story.
This happened in the house that we were always hearing stuff in and things moving. But there was one thing, even our friends and stuff that would come over would hear it. We'd be sitting on the couch watching TV or just doing things in the house, and you could hear this car pull up in the driveway, and you could hear the engine rev up, and then you'd hear a door slam, and you'd be waiting for somebody to come knock on the door, but no one ever came. And one day we were getting ready to go out to town or something, and one of my cousins was there, and we were waiting for Mama to get finished getting ready. And she said, "Marie, you've got company." And I said, "No, we don't." And she said, "Well, yeah, I heard the car. I heard the door slam and everything." And I said, "No, we don't." And so she didn't believe me. And so she got up and went to the door and looked. And she said, "Well, there's nobody out there." And I said, "This happens all the time." And so it just got to be just a ever so often occurrence. And my dad, he didn't like talking about ghost stories and things like that, didn't believe in it. So his excuse was that there was big tractor trailer trucks way down the road on the highway was echoing up the holler. But like I said, we lived in a hollers quite a ways from the main highway, but that was his reasoning. But we knew it was just their visitor that would just come let us know he was there.
Now I'm going to ask you, what road did you live on?
Sugar Creek.
And it was out in the middle of nowhere, right? For context.
Yes. Yes.
So you used to always tell me about the Salem lot fog. Can you describe that scene at night? What it would look like every night?
Oh God, you had to go up steps to come inside the house, and there was two big screen doors on the front, and we just had a little air conditioner, so in the summer it'd get real hot, and we'd have fans and stuff, so we'd open the door where it'd just be the screen door. And being the dumb thing I am, we watched Salem's Lot, and then whenever I went to bed, I woke up and there was fog kind of rolling up the steps, because we live near a river and a creek, Sugar Creek, and the fog and stuff was coming up to the door, and I just knew any minute that boy was going to float up to that door. And I would just lay and kind of hide my face in the cover saying, "Please don't come get me, please don't come get me."
If you like these creepy, weird, scary stories, follow our podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads. If you all want me to do a series soon, I will collect all of my family's ghost stories and we'll put them in one big giant collection for you all. Once again, it's Matt, M-A-T-T, from Nomads. You can find the link in the comments. This has been my mother, Billy Joe.
This story has been submitted by a listener. I need you to understand that this story is not a creepypasta. This is a story that she survived. And it gave me chills. This is one of the most scary stories I've ever read. She didn't come forward for a long time, because last time she did, it came back for her. Welcome back to After Midnight Stories, where it's too late to be logical but too early to care. We talk about things that no one would believe, but we believe you here. I hope you're all tucked into bed, because after this one, you may not want to get out. Alexis grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, not near them, but in them. Her house sat surrounded by dense mountain woods, the kind where sound travels weird and light doesn't really reach the ground. She and her brother had a Chucky doll. Their grandmother, their mama, refused to be in the same room as it. She didn't explain why. She just said, "Get rid of it." So, they do what kids do. They took it into the woods behind their house and they buried it. The next morning, the doll was back in their toy box, covered in mud, covered in grass. But they hadn't touched it. They hadn't seen it since they buried it. But nobody had touched it. They woke their mama up and showed her. She looked at that doll like she had seen a ghost. She didn't ask questions, she didn't call anyone, she took that doll outside and lit it on fire. And then she said something that Alexis will never forget. "Do not tell anybody. Act like it never happened." That night, Alexis and her brother did what kids do after something terrifying happens. They tried to be normal. They set up a tent on the porch and they told scary stories. Which, in retrospect, probably wasn't the best move. That's when they heard it just past the tree line. something saying their names. Not calling out, not yelling, just saying their names. And they answered, "Yeah." Silence. The porch light went out. And then something started working the gate latch. Slowly. Everyone in the house knew that they were outside. Nobody else was supposed to come that night. They looked out and saw black figures surrounding the porch. Tall, solid, not transparent like a spirit, with red eyes. They ran inside and locked that door. Their mama met them. And this is the part that Alexis said she forgot until she heard someone else on TikTok talk about it. Word for word. If you seen it, no you didn't. If you hear it, no you didn't. And if you felt it, no you didn't. Don't acknowledge it. Don't claim it. Don't feed it. 4 years pass, and Alexis messed up. She told her stepmom the story. That night she wakes up, and at the end of her bed are tall black figures. So tall that it's hunched over against the ceiling with red eyes. She wants you to know that she was awake. She's certain she was awake because she felt terrified. She couldn't speak, she couldn't move, and not until it reached out towards her. And something unlocked. She ran to the bathroom and locked the door. Turned every light on, and then the banging started. She sat in the corner of that bathroom, eyes squeezed shut, and she repeated her mama's words over and over in her head. If you seen it, no you didn't. If you hear it, no you didn't. If you felt it, no you didn't. Until it stopped. She stayed in that bathroom until her stepmom knocked in the morning to tell her it was time for school. She's never told anyone that second part. I don't know what was in those woods, and I don't know what came back whenever she talked about it, but I do know one thing. That phrase that her mama said isn't unique to their family. People all across Appalachia have heard variations of it, which means someone, somewhere, a long time ago, figured out a rule. If you've heard something like this, please let me know. You can always DM or email me your stories, and I'm sure others have stories quite similar to this. I hope I didn't scare you too bad, and I hope you don't have to get out of bed, and I really hope that those figures do not come back, because this story gave me chills. And I think it was genuinely one of the most terrifying stories I've ever read. So Alexis, I believe that you're safe. And do not worry, we all believe you here.
Hi, my little scary cats. I got a scary story time for y'all tonight. And this one is great. So get comfortable because here we go. Okay, so this takes place back when we were still living at the haunted apartments, okay? Except now we had grown up some, and my parents were buying the apartments next door to the haunted apartments, and they gave us each our own apartment in the haunted apartments, okay? So I stayed in the apartment that we all were living together in, and then my girl cousin moved on the one side of me, and my other girl cousin moved on the other side of me, and my boy cousin got the back apartment. That was the most haunted apartment. Like, we couldn't keep it rented. Tenants would always say that weird things would happen in there. So many paranormal activities went on in that apartment. And then one person actually unalived themselves inside of that apartment. So that apartment was so scary to be in. I hated being in there alone. So I hated being in there at all. But my cousin was like, yeah, I'll move in there, you know. And I was like, okay, but are you sure? Because I mean, it's really haunted. And he was like, yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't faze me. We've dealt with paranormal stuff all our life, you know, and it's not a big deal. And I was like, are you sure? You don't have to move in there. I still have the extra bedroom. You can just stay with me, or you can stay with one of your sisters. It's cool. And he was like, no, it's cool. I want my own apartment. I'm gonna move in there. So he moves in, okay? And it wasn't long before he moves in before something happened. So one night me and my cousin are hanging out. We're watching movies and just, just talking, hanging out. And my other cousin had went to work and she was working late that night. So, I told my cousin, I was like, hey, I'm going to bed. I was like, I'm getting kind of tired. It was getting late. And she was like, okay. She goes, hey, is it cool if I just stay in the bedroom over here instead of going back to my apartment? I was like, yeah, it's whatever, So I go to my bedroom and I go to sleep. I go to sleep, and then I don't feel like I was asleep for long, but I woke up hearing noises, okay? I heard banging and screaming and just like a bunch of stuff being moved around. And I was like, that's weird. But then I thought my girl cousin was still there, and I was like, she's probably just in the living room watching TV still and has a TV up loud. So I didn't think much of it. So I'm trying to fall back asleep. All of a sudden, I hear bang, 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 bang on my door, my back door. Okay, so when you walk into my apartment, there's my front door, and then there's the living room, and you walk all the way to the back, and then there's the back bedroom, and the back door is in the back bedroom. Now, if you were to walk out my back door, it goes straight to my cousin's apartment. Just a few steps, and it's my cousin's apartment in the back, and then the whole backyard. And so, I heard bam, 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 bam on the door. So I get up, I look out the window next to the door, and it's my cousin. And I open the door, and he runs in, and he closes the door, and he locks it. And I'm like, what's going on? What happened? He looked shook. He was so scared. And he was like, there's something in my apartment. There is something in my apartment. And I was like, okay, what do you mean? Like somebody broke in or something? He's like, no. He goes, there's something in my apartment, and it's not human. And I was like, what? And he was like, I don't know. I woke up, and it was standing at the foot of my bed. And it was tall, and it was a dark, shadowy figure. And it had long, lanky arms, and it had like claws at the end of the arms. And he's like, I just looked at it, and it stayed staring at me. And when I got up to like run out, it lunged at me. And he's like, but I ran out, and I ran out the door. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, so, he ran to my apartment. So I said, let's look out the window. So we look out the window to his apartment, because you can see from the back window straight to his apartment. And he would never close his curtains. I don't know why. I would always tell him, why don't you close the curtains? And he'd be like, it's because nobody's back here. Nobody comes back here, whatever. It's whatever, And he had left his door wide open when he ran out. So we're looking, and sure enough, through his window, we can see there's a shadowy figure walking back and forth in the apartment. And all we see is stuff being thrown around, and all we hear is like bam, 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 things just like hitting the wall, hitting the floor. I mean, it was like loud. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, what is it? And he was like, I don't know. I can't explain it. It just didn't look human. It didn't have a human face. And I was like, oh my God, we got to get out of here. And just then I heard it, bam, on the back door. And then I heard it again, bam, bam, bam. And it was hitting the back door like it was trying to break the door down. And I was like, we got to get out of here. Let's go get your sister, and let's go to my mom and dad's house. So sure enough, we go wake up his sister, and we run out the front and run across the street to my mom and dad's house. And I run into my room, and we run in there, we lock the door, and I look out my window, okay? So now it's in my apartment. I can see it. We had left the door open, and my window goes directly to across the street. You can see it directly across the street. Now, we can't see perfectly inside the apartment, but we can see something walking back and forth, and it's huge. And all it looks is like a shadow, and it's walking back and forth through the apartment. And all we see is everything being thrown. Everything's thrown around, okay? Everything. And so I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what do we do? And just then I seen headlights. And I was like, oh no. And I just knew my cousin was home from work. She pulls in, and so when she pulled in, she got out the car. We run outside, and I'm like, hey, don't go in there. And I'm calling her. I'm like, come here, come here. And she's like, oh, what happened? And I'm like, just come here, run over here. And so she's like walked up to the door. And so just then she turns back to look inside the apartment, and she screams, and she drops all her stuff, and she takes off running. So she runs over there to where we're at. And we run into my room, lock the door, run to go call my parents. And then we call the cops and everything. Okay, so the police come out, and when the police came out, we go back across the street, right? I mean, and there were so many police. They had shut down the whole block. And so we go back across the street. We go into the apartment and everything is tore up. Everything is shredded. The couches are shredded. Everything is thrown on the floor. All the cabinet doors were open. I mean, everything is just torn up. The murals are cracked. It was crazy. And so we go into my boy cousin's apartment in the back. The door was broken down. In my back door, it was broken down. We go into my boy's cousin apartment, and when we go in there, everything is torn apart too. Cabinet doors open, bed shredded into pieces. Everything was tore apart. Okay, and there was like carvings on the wall, like scratches on the wall. I mean, it was just terrible. And so the police were like, well, we think somebody broke in. And I was like, I don't think somebody broke in. It didn't look like when we had to give a description of it, we couldn't really give a description. They didn't take us seriously. They were like, okay, sure. I'm like, no, it was huge. And my cousin was like, yeah, and the face wasn't human. And he was like, he had eyes. His eyes were glowing red. And they were like, they didn't believe us. They were like, no, somebody probably just broke into y'all's apartment. They were looking for something, obviously, because they tore everything apart. And, but I don't think they found what they were looking for. Okay? So I don't know. But for some weird reason, I feel like that trap door that was in the back bedroom of my cousin's bedroom, the trap door with the little cemetery in it, had something to do with it. I don't know why, but it just kind of connected together, like, I don't know, it said it was looking for something, and it tore up everything. It tore up the carpet, like the carpet was pulled up from the floor. It was looking for something, but I just don't know what. And so the police made a report or whatever, and we went to go stay at my mom's for a while because, until things died down. But after that, I don't remember ever seeing it again, but I don't know what it was. I don't know. But if y'all know what it was, leave it in the comment section. Share this video. Maybe somebody knows. They're knowledgeable on stuff like that. I don't know what kind of a demon it was, if it was a demon or if it was I don't think it was a skinwalker. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it wanted. But anyway, that's my scary story time for tonight. My love scary cats. Until next time, stay toxic.
I see dead people. Some of you guys know this already, but I grew up in a haunted house. I was probably around 8 or 9 when this happened. I was in my room, which is the most haunted room in the whole house. I was cleaning my room, and I had one of those dressers that had a mirror on it. I picked up some clothes and put them on my dresser and looked into the mirror, and that's when I saw him. There was a man standing behind me. He looked well kept, he was in a tuxedo, and he had short, dark brown hair. But my first instinct is like, why is there a guy behind me? So I turned around. When I turned around, he was gone. And that was the first time I had ever seen a ghost.
Where'd you just come from? I took the wrong way. Oh my goodness.
These guys were laughing and recording in the Appalachian woods when they suddenly realized a woman was silently walking behind them. Nobody heard footsteps. Nobody saw where she came from. And the second she spoke, the entire mood changed.
No, we're not supposed to go that way.
No.
No, we don't want to meet him.
I don't want to meet him.
How about not? I don't know.
If you go the other way, you don't gotta go over the tree.
I don't know, it sounds like she's gargling water.
Guy asked, where did you come from? But her voice sounded deeply wrong, slurred, shaky, almost like somebody pretending to know how humans talk. She said, I got lost, but nobody believed her because every time she opened her mouth, she sounded less and less human. Then she kept repeating the same question. Have you seen my other 2 people over and over? Like she was stuck on the same line. And when she warned them not to go down a trail, she had literally just walked out of herself. You could hear the panic start setting in because by that point, they knew something was seriously wrong with her.
Have you ever heard of Jodine Searin? Jodine was 39 years old, and she did have some mental disabilities, but that didn't stop her from living alone. She had her own apartment in Carlsbad, California. Jodine was very close to her parents, and on Valentine's Day of 2007, her parents decided to go on a date. They were having a good time on their date, but they hadn't heard from Jodine all day. They couldn't shake an ominous feeling, so they went to go check on her. After knocking on the door and receiving no answer, they decided to use their spare key to enter, but the chain was on the latch. Getting more nervous, Art broke into the house. They knocked on Jodine's door where they saw a half-naked man laying on top of her. They thought they had just interrupted Jodine's date, so embarrassed they walked into a different room. But after waiting for a while and not seeing Jodine anywhere, they once again went to go knock on her bedroom door. Jodine was laying lifeless on the bed. They immediately started CPR, but there was no use. Jodi had been dead for hours. The man had escaped through the front door while her parents were waiting in the other room. Police noticed that there was no forced entry and nothing had been stolen from her apartment. There was an unknown DNA sample found in her apartment, but no matches were made and the case would go cold. That's until 2017. Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia would use phenotyping to predict the ancestry and appearance of the suspect, using the DNA sample. This new evidence led to David Mabrito. The likelihood that it was somebody else was 1 in 64 quintillion. David had unalived himself several years prior, so he would never face justice for Jodine's murder. I personally love how this new DNA technology is solving these really old cases. But what are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments. And as always, follow for more true crime. Have you ever heard of Peg Entwistle and the legend behind the Hollywood sign? In 1923, the famous Hollywood sign was put up, but back then it said Hollywood Land. Peg was born in Wales in 1908, but would immigrate to the United States with her father in her teenage years. Sadly, her father passed away in 1922 in a car accident. She would then go on to live with her uncle. Peg was a talented actress, and when she was 17 years old, she would start her Broadway career. She starred in multiple Broadway shows, but would start touring with the Theater Guild, eventually landing in Los Angeles. She landed a supporting role in the movie 13 Women, but her part was edited down to a 15-second appearance. RKO Pictures would not renew her contract with the studio. On September 16th of 1932, she told her uncle that she was going out with a friend. 2 days later, a hiker would find a woman's purse, jacket, shoes, and a note. A little further down the trail was Peg's body. It seems she climbed to the top of the Hollywood land sign and jumped. Since her death, people have started to believe that Peg haunts the area around the Hollywood sign. The stories first started in the 1940s when the H to the sign mysteriously fell over. The scent of gardenias is overwhelming on the trail, and apparently gardenias were Peg's favorite perfume. And many hikers have seen a mysterious blonde woman wearing 1930s clothing walking the trail. So what do you think? Does Peg haunt the Hollywood sign? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And follow for more haunted history. Have you ever heard of Dolly Ostrich? Dolly was married to Fred. Fred was the owner of a Milwaukee apron company. He was very successful but also very busy. And most of the time he would prefer to drink rather than spend any time with Dolly. Sometime in 1913, Dolly's sewing machine would break and Fred would send a 17-year-old Otto Sandhuber to fix it. Dolly knew that Fred was sending Otto, and she met him at the door wearing only stockings and a robe. Their affair would begin that day, and they did the typical meeting in hotels or meeting in Fred and Dolly's home when Fred wasn't there, but neighbors started suspecting something. Some articles even say that Fred found out. Either way, Dolly moved Fred into their attic, and he would live in that attic for 5 years. During the day, he would spend all his time with Dolly, and then at night he'd go up into the attic and write novels. One day, Fred told Dolly that they were going to sell the house and move to Los Angeles. Instead of just breaking off the affair, Dolly had Otto go to Los Angeles ahead of them and sneak into the attic of the new home. Otto would live in that attic for 4 more years until August 22nd of 1922. Otto overheard Dolly and Fred arguing. He came into the room with 2 pistols. The 2 men struggled and Fred wound up shot. In a panic, Otto locked Dolly into a closet and retreated back into the attic. When police arrived, Dolly told them that there had been a robbery. With no evidence to dispute it, police let her go. Instead of just going public with Otto after Fred's death, she married a Herman Shapiro. But once again, he was an attorney that was busy all the time. She then started another affair with a man named Roy Klum, all the while Otto was in her attic. Dolly convinced Roy and a neighbor to dispose of the 2 guns used in Fred's death. But when Dolly broke up with Roy, Roy told the police everything. Police were able to find the 2 guns, and Dolly would be arrested. While Dolly was in jail, she asked her new husband Herman to feed Otto. She told Herman that Otto was her brother. The 2 men began to talk, and Otto told Herman everything. Both Otto and Dolly were set free. Otto because the statute of limitations had ran out on manslaughter, and Dolly had a hung jury. Dolly died in 1961 at age 80. How can you stay in an attic for 9 years? But what are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments. And follow for more wild history. Who hasn't seen this movie, The Shining? Based on Stephen King's book of the same name. So we all probably know that the hotel in the book is based on the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. The Stanley Hotel was constructed in 1909. The 420-room retreat was funded by F.O. Stanley. Mr. Stanley died in 1940, and since his passing, he has often been seen at the reception desk while guests are checking in. And his wife Flora often plays the piano in the music room at the hotel. Other strange things happen at the hotel, like shadow figures, lights flickering, items moving on their own, but most scary to me is the laughter that seems to come from the halls. Many famous ghost hunters have come from all around the world to explore the Stanley Hotel, but you don't have to be a professional to have the ghost experience. You can opt for the Ghost Adventure package. You'll be given a room on the top floor and an electromagnetic field reader. So are you brave enough to stay at the Stanley Hotel? Leave it in the comments and follow for more ghost stories.
So listen to me.
Had an interesting morning at 6 o'clock. It started with a doorbell ring, and if you know anything about us, we live in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. We live 6 miles from the nearest small town, and we live on a minimum maintenance road that the bridge is out. So nobody's really ever, unless the farmers that are around us, are in this area. So anyway, we get a doorbell ring at 6 a.m. this morning. And so I'm like, oh, we getting an Amazon package or something? Whatever. So my husband goes, check it out. And all of a sudden he comes back in and he's like, hey, you need to get out here because there's some tweaker chick outside. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I go out there and there's this, she's a tiny little thing that is in leggings and a hoodie and is, it's apparent that she's on something, some substance anyway. And so I'm trying to talk to her like, hey, what's your name? Nothing. She's like, can you take me home? Absolutely. Where's home? Nothing. Can't get anything hardly out of her. And it wasn't that she was being rude. She just was quiet and just out of it. And so I just kind of was trying to talk softly and can you tell me your name? Can you take me home? Absolutely. Where's home? Do you have an address? Can you just take me home? Absolutely. But I don't want to get in my car. I don't know where we're going or whatever. And so again, just a lot of questions, a lot of prompting. Can you tell me? And then she's like, well, can you take me to or can I call my mom? Sure. My husband gives her his phone and she tries to dial a number. She's missing a number. It's like, that's not the right number. And so then she gives the phone back and I'm like, can you tell me your name? She won't tell me her name. Tell me your parents' name, first name, anything, address. And so she's shivering. And obviously we don't necessarily want to take her into our house because, we don't know anything. And obviously she's under the influence of something. And so, anyway, I'm like, I'm going to go get you a blanket. And so, I go and, I run inside to get a blanket and I call the non-emergency sheriff's number. They take my information, and of course, where we live, the town that has the police in it, or whatever the county office is, 20 miles from us. So they're like, well, we can send a deputy out, but I don't know when they'll get there. Solid. And so I'm like, all right, so they took my information, address, whatever. I go back outside. My husband hasn't gotten anywhere other than he gave her a piece of paper and a pen. He's like, can you write down, your address, all these things. And so I'm out there trying to get in. So then my husband just starts like, he takes off. And apparently he told me later, he's like, well, I didn't know if it was like some sort of distraction. So I was walking around the house trying to, you know, see if there was somebody laying in wait or whatever. And so anyway, this goes on 20 minutes. And so on the piece of paper, she writes down an address. And so or like numbers, like 5 numbers, and can't read them very well. So my husband's looking up, he's like, do you live on, you know, this road, which is a half mile, the main road's a half mile from where we live. And she doesn't really say yes, but she doesn't really say no. And so we're like, you know, do you, whatever, keep going on. And so she's like, and she keeps repeating, can you take me home? And I'm like, do you know how you got here? I walked. Where did you walk from? You know, did you get in a car accident? Is your car somewhere? Did somebody drop you off? Are you safe? Like, whatever. And so then she's like, can I call? I'm like, yep. So I give her my phone again, and she puts in a phone number. And she's like, can you call? And I'm like, yeah. Who am I calling? Like, it's 6 a.m. in the morning. Like, what's the name of who we're calling? My mom. Okay, does your mom have a name? Like, we just kept going back and forth. So she's like, can I call? Yep. So we hit send, and finally a lady answers, and I'm like, hey, I think I have your daughter on the phone. And then she's like, Mom. And this lady also sounds kind of rough, which, again, it's 6 a.m. in the morning. And she's like, Mom, can I come home or come to your house? I don't remember what she said exactly. And so then I'm like, yeah, I said, she's at our place. This is where we live. Where do you live? You know, blah, 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 all that. And so it's like 1.5 miles from our house. And so I'm like, is it okay if we bring her? Yep. She's like, I'm not home, so I'll call my husband and let him know. Awesome. So I'm like, all right. So we take her into our garage, get into my car, you know, head out or whatever. And so I'm like looking at my husband, I'm like, do you know where this is at? Because I didn't look on the map. I don't know where we're going. And he's like, yeah, it's just up the road or whatever. I'm like, okay. And so I have like the heater on full heat, like she's freezing. And you know, we don't know. I mean, I don't know how long she's been outside, if she slept all night, I don't know. Anyway, so I got the heat blasting on her. Finally get up to where there's 2 houses by, and I'm like, is it this house? She's like, no, it's the second one. I'm like, oh, sweet. So at least she recognizes we must be in the right place. So we pull into the driveway, go down, whatever, to the house, and she's like, can you help me get into the house to make sure it's all right? I'm like, yep. And so I'm like, great, now are we dropping her off somewhere? Like, should we be dropping her off here? So anyway, so I get out and I come around to her side, and she's like, can you go see? I'm like, yep. And so I walk up to the front door, and at least by this time, all of a sudden somebody came to the door. It's an older man. And I'm like, I think I have your daughter with me. Like, is this? And he's like, well, it's my wife's daughter. And I'm like, okay, is it okay if we drop her off here? Like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, yep. And so by this point, I turn around, she's out of the car and walking up to the car. She's still out of it to some extent. And so she like has the blanket that I gave her, and she's walking in the house. I'm like, I really don't care about it. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, turns around, hands it. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, whatever. And he's like, thank you very much, whatever. So then I was like, okay, so we quickly get in the car, and I'm like talking to my husband. I'm like, well, I got to call the sheriff because they're coming to our house. And so I call the dispatch back and give her the information of where we took this lady and just kind of the situation of anything that we knew, which really wasn't a lot, but just said that basically the gal said that it was her mom and dad, and this is where we dropped her off at and whatever. And she's like, okay, hang on a minute. Let me call the deputies, see if they need any more information from you. Gets back on. Nope, we don't. If they do, they'll get a hold of you, but you know, we'll take it from here, and we'll probably do a check just to make sure everything's okay. Sweet. Really like to know kind of more about, like, how'd she get here? I mean, again, we're not close to anything, and I mean, how long has she been walking? Did she sleep out here? Just, I have all sorts of questions that I'll never get the answers to. But again, never know what's going to happen. And again, we live in a small town in rural South Dakota. So that was quite an interesting start to my day at 6 a.m. this morning.
Hi, my little scary cats. I got a scary story time for you tonight. And this one's creepy. Okay, so this is about the time that a ghost saved my life. Okay, so I went to work at this place, okay? But before I went to work there, this place used to be something else. It was a club, like an after hours type club. And there was this girl who was unalived at this club. So they turned it into something else. They made it something else. It got shut down and turned into something else. And then we had where we were working on the other side of it. But we would see her. She haunted the whole strip mall. We would see her in the business because like where our storage closet was kind of like where the club storage closet was. And I don't know, the story was kind of like she was unalived and they put her in the storage closet and they didn't find her for days. Okay, so we would see her, we'd feel the cold spots, we would hear the sighs. She'd be like, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, so let me tell you how she saved my life. Okay, one day I was going to work. I opened at 8 o'clock in the morning, but I got there early. It was like 7:15 because, you know, I had a bunch of stuff I would always do. I would like set up and get my stuff ready and do all these things, you know, and I would clean up and do things like that. Okay, so I got there about 7:15 that day, and I had so much stuff. Okay, I had my duffel bag, I had my drink cup, I had magazines, my phone, my chargers, everything. I'm carrying everything. I walk inside, I drop all my stuff down, and I don't lock the door. Okay, I opened it and I don't lock the door. I'm not focused, you know. I'm young and I'm thinking, you know, of all these things that I'm doing. It's almost the weekend, you know, and I got plans. I got big plans to hang out with my cousins and my friends and all these things. So I'm just like not thinking of, you know, focus on what I need to be focused on, I guess. So I walk in and I'm putting up all my stuff, and then I walk to the back. I walk to the back, and then all of a sudden I hear the door. So we had a chime on the door. So every time I open the door, it goes ding, ding, whatever. Okay, so I come to the front. I run up to the front, and there's this man standing there. And he's like, hey, I'm hungry. Do you got any money? And I'm like, well, I got like $5 in cash. I said, but if you want to, I can, you know, order you some food or something. You can hang out for a minute and the food comes. And I still give you the $5 if you want. And he kind of like gets mad. He's like, and then he turns around and he walks out. And I'm like, okay, rudeness, whatever. So I go back to doing what I'm doing, right? And, you know, I'm just like, I'm in my zone. I'm vibing, you know. I got the music on and I'm cleaning and I'm doing all these other things. So I'm not really thinking, you know, about nothing. So all of a sudden, about 20 minutes pass and I hear the door, okay? And the door, somebody's pulling on the door, I come back up to the front and I'm like, I see the man again. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess he must have changed his mind. Maybe he wants the $5, maybe he wants some food or something, because said he was hungry. So I go to unlock the door. So we have this buzzer thing that unlocks the door. But then I was like, that's weird because I don't remember locking it. And he's pulling on the door aggressively. And I'm like, weird. And he's standing there. He's like, open the door. And I'm like, okay. And so I go to push the buzzer, and he's like, open the door. And he's like pulling it. He starts getting really aggressive. And I'm like, hold up. And then I kind of look at him, and I notice he's covered in red stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. So I like take a couple of steps closer, because like our whole front is windows, okay? And I take a step closer, and I'm looking, and he's covered in red stuff, okay? And so I'm like, he's like, open the door now, open the door. And I'm like, no. So I call the police, right? And it's crazy because the police come like fast, and he takes off though, right? Okay, so they come and they walk in, and I'm like, that's weird because I didn't unlock the door. You know, you have to push the buzzer to unlock the door. I didn't unlock the door. And I was like, how did y'all get in? And he's like, we just walked in. The door was unlocked. And I was like, how was the door unlocked? And so they start telling me, they're like, hey, have you seen this man? And I was like, well, I called you because of the man. I said, there was a man here. He came, he asked me for money. He said that he was hungry, and I was offered to give him $5 and some food. And then he just left. He got mad and he left. Then he came back like 20 minutes later, and he was like pulling on the door, but he was covered in red stuff. And he was like, hey, open the door, open the door. And I was going to open the door, but then I noticed, and then I said, no, I'm not going to open the door. And I called y'all. And they were like, okay, well, what did the man look like? And I was like, I described him to him. And he was like, okay, so this is the man that we're looking for. He goes, I think you need to sit down. I was like, no, I don't want to sit down. He's like, sit down. No, I don't want to sit down. He's like, look, there's this man. Okay. He was like 2 buildings down. So like, mind you, we're here, and then it was the club, but they had shut it down and made something else. And then there was like a little gas station. And then right next door to that, there was a flower shop. They said that he went into that flower shop and he robbed a lady and unalived her viciously. Okay. And he came back, I guess, after that, and came back to where I was, and he was trying to get in. I don't know why. I don't know what would have happened. I don't know, but I know that if it hadn't been for that girl ghost in there, he would have been able to open the door. Because why was it that he couldn't open the door? It was like it was locked. He kept pulling on it. He wouldn't do it. But when the police walked in, they just walked in, and I never touched the buzzer to unlock the door or anything. And I never locked the door because, like I said, I didn't focus. I wasn't like, okay, lock the door behind me, things like that. Always remember to lock your doors. You never know what can happen in the blink of an eye. I wasn't expecting it, and I just didn't leave. I didn't lock the door, Like I said, being young and dumb, sometimes you let things slip past you. But yeah, that's what happened. That's when the ghost saved my life, because I know that ghost had to have had that door locked, because how would he not get in? But anyway, that's my story time for tonight, my little scary cats. Tell me what y'all think in the comment section. Share this video so people will know. Lock your doors behind you, ladies. Lock your doors. Even men too. You never know. Somebody could be creeping up on you and you wouldn't even expect it. Things can happen in a second, and you don't even realize that they would happen. Okay, my little scary cats. Until next time, stay toxic.
Now, this is something that was in the interview that I did not know, and no YouTuber that I have seen has talked about this. So Jack and Janet obviously moved into this house. Before Chase Street, Jack had lived in a house that was almost identical to this house.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that was where he had his very first paranormal experience in his entire life.
Okay, I've definitely not heard about this.
Yeah, so as a boy, he saw 2 pairs of eyes near a stairway. And this is going to become a very common theme in the future. When he saw him, he got scared and he ran to his sister, and he could not wake his sister up.
That just adds to the fear?
Yes. Now, you're probably saying, what do you mean you're going to hear about this in the future? In the future, this entire case that we're going to be talking about, for whatever reason, the story goes that one person will be asleep and a horrific thing will happen. And another time, this person will be awake and the other person will have a horrific thing occur. So this is something that happened in Jack's childhood that foreshadowed this entire haunting all these years later. Now, he was 9 when this happened.